Welcome to medieval Europe, where sobriety was basically a crime against humanity. Picture this. You're living in an era where the water could kill you faster than a plague rat. So naturally, everyone drank alcohol like it was, well, water. But some brilliant medieval minds thought, you know what? Regular drinking isn't enough. We need mandatory drinking festivals. These weren't your modern college parties where someone inevitably ends up crying in a bathroom. No, these were official, government-sanctioned events where not getting completely hammered was considered unpatriotic. Imagine explaining to your boss today that you can't come to work because it's National Get Absolutely Wasted Day, and it's legally required. The medieval logic was flawless. If we're all going to be drunk anyway, let's make it a patriotic duty. It was like a twisted version of community service, except instead of picking up trash, you were picking yourself up off the tavern floor. And the best part? If you stayed sober, people would literally question your loyalty to the crown. Why aren't you face down in a puddle of ale, Geoffrey? Are you perhaps a spy? This is the history of mandatory medieval intoxication. Stay tuned to learn their clever survival strategies, because apparently, even in chaos, medieval folks had a plan. Let's talk about France's greatest contribution to workplace culture. Saint Monday. No, this wasn't an actual saint, though considering how religiously the French observed it, maybe it should have been. Saint Monday was the unofficial holiday that happened every Monday when workers were too hungover from Sunday's festivities to function like normal human beings. Picture medieval French workers stumbling to their jobs, looking like extras from a zombie movie, and collectively deciding, you know what, today is a religious holiday. Saint Monday demands we stay home and contemplate our life choices. The bosses couldn't argue because technically honoring saints was important, and who were they to question the workers' sudden spiritual awakening? This became so common that employers just accepted it. Monday became the unofficial recovery day across France. It was like having a built-in 3-day weekend, except the third day was spent in various stages of regret and nausea. French productivity on Mondays was approximately 0, but hey, at least they were honest about it. The beauty of Saint Monday was its democratic nature. Rich or poor, noble or peasant, everyone could participate in the sacred ritual of being too drunk to work. It was perhaps the world's first universal basic hangover program. This tradition highlights a fascinating aspect of historical work-life balance, or lack thereof. How might modern workplaces adapt lessons from such historical quirks? In some regions, drinking wasn't just encouraged, it was a literal test of loyalty. Imagine showing up to a royal feast and being handed a goblet the size of your head, while the king stares at you expectantly. Refusing wasn't just rude, it was basically treason. What's that? You don't want to drink yourself into oblivion for your sovereign? Guards. The logic was wonderfully twisted. Truly loyal subjects would risk liver failure for their lord. It was like an ancient version of trust falls, except instead of catching you, everyone watched you fall face first into your soup. The more spectacularly you failed at basic motor functions, the more loyal you appeared. Some nobles even kept loyalty cups, massive drinking vessels that could hold enough alcohol to knock out a horse. These weren't just drinking implements, they were weapons of mass intoxication. Surviving a session with the loyalty cup was considered a badge of honor, assuming you remembered it the next day. The peer pressure was intense. Picture being the only sober person at a medieval party, trying to explain why you're not participating in the traditional drink until you see double ceremony. I'm driving my horse home. Wasn't an acceptable excuse when horses were probably more sober than their riders. Here's where medieval drinking culture got accidentally progressive. When everyone was completely hammered, social hierarchy became meaningless. Knights, peasants, merchants, and clergy all ended up in the same state, face down in the mud, speaking in tongues, and making questionable life decisions. These mandatory drinking festivals were perhaps the most democratic institutions of the medieval period. Your title, wealth, or social standing meant nothing when you couldn't remember your own name. A drunk duke and a drunk serf were equally likely to wake up in a ditch, wondering why they were wearing someone else's clothes. It was beautiful chaos. Lords would find themselves arm in arm with their servants, singing off-key ballads about imaginary conquests. The same people who normally wouldn't share a table were now sharing the floor, united in their complete inability to stand upright. Class warfare was temporarily suspended because nobody could remember what class they belonged to. Smart medieval folks developed sophisticated strategies for surviving these alcoholic obstacle courses. Some would eat enormous amounts of bread beforehand, the original carb loading. Others would secretly water down their drinks, though getting caught was social suicide.
Are you diluting your loyalty to the crown, Harold?
The truly clever ones mastered the art of strategic spilling. They'd dramatically gesture while telling stories, accidentally splashing half their drink on nearby listeners. It was performance art meets survival tactics. Oh no, I've spilled my ale while describing the dragon I totally fought last week. Then there were the designated survivors, people who would fake being drunk while staying relatively sober, to make sure everyone else got home alive. These unsung heroes would practice their drunk walk, perfect their slurred speech, and memorize a collection of nonsensical drunk stories. They were basically medieval designated drivers, except they were walking everyone home and making sure nobody fell into any wells. Some regions even developed drunk tests to make sure people were properly intoxicated. Guards would ask complex questions like, "What's your name?" And if you answered correctly, you clearly needed more alcohol. It was like a sobriety test in reverse. So what can we learn from our ancestors' commitment to organized intoxication? For starters, they proved that humans will find any excuse to turn drinking into a competitive sport. They also demonstrated that social bonding through shared suffering is a time-honored tradition. These festivals, ridiculous as they seem, served important social functions. They provided stress relief in an era where life was generally awful, created temporary social equality, and gave everyone something to complain about together the next day. Nothing builds community like collective regret. Modern team-building exercises could learn from medieval drinking culture. Sure, trust falls are nice, but have you tried synchronized stumbling? Corporate retreats would be much more memorable if they included mandatory loyalty drinking challenges. HR departments everywhere are probably grateful this tradition didn't survive. The next time you're at a company party wondering why everyone's acting weird, just remember, at least your boss isn't testing your loyalty by making you drink until you can't remember your own name. We've evolved. Now we just make small talk and pretend to enjoy networking. Medieval drinking festivals remind us that humans have always been wonderfully ridiculous, and our ancestors were just as capable of making questionable decisions as we are today. They just made them with more style and less liability insurance.